So this week, as we approach the end of this series, I wanted to move from metta towards beings and move towards a metta for all phenomena, something that I've called situational metta. So let's have a look at our key points for this evening. Thanks very much, Emma. So I'm going to start by giving my own view of how the world is often seen in our culture and society, offer a couple of examples which suggest how we create dukkha, suffering, when we act from this view, and then posit an alternative, quite radical suggestion, as it's my last talk of the current series. Thanks, Emma. So we live in a very literal culture, one significantly influenced by materialism, a scientific reductive approach where we want one single cause, one person to blame, one goal, one truth, and only one way to see reality. And we place ourselves at the very center of this world as the seer, the experiencer of this external universe. So you might dismiss this depiction of life. You might believe that it doesn't really apply to your life, or you may be feeling slightly uneasy at that description. And if we reflect on our lives, we may find examples when this is true, maybe not all the time, but if we pause and look. I'm going to give a couple of examples, one I witnessed and one that directly involved me. And you may have heard both of these before, as I've used them in previous talks, but as I'm doing a series with Harsha Ratner, I chose these two examples because they both involve cars, which I thought he might like. So the first one, which I witnessed, was a woman with a group of children getting into a car on Promenade Way in Brightlingsea a few summers ago. And as she loaded up the kids, she discovered she had a flat tyre. And despite seeing it and kicking it, she still drove off until a little way down the road, the bumping and scraping sound of the wheel made her stop. And when she got out, she was on the verge of hysteria and she kept shouting, "This isn't happening. This cannot be happening." My own example was a number of years ago. I was driving back from my office in Colchester to get back in time to join a conference call with my boss and some other senior people. And I pulled up outside the house with literally seconds to go, jumped out of the car, dropped all my papers and my BlackBerry, which dates the story, onto the road. I picked them up, and as I started running for the front door, I realized that the car was slowly rolling down the road because I'd forgot to put the handbrake on. I'm going to finish that story a bit later. But one thing both of those examples have in common is that the universe never got the memo about the fact that it needs to do what I want, or what that unfortunate woman wanted in my other example. And when I stop and think about that what I'm demanding is that the world and all the people in the world, the ones I come in contact with, maybe even the wider universe, if I think about the weather, they all need to do exactly what I want. And that does sound fairly deluded. And even given an incredible amount of power and resources, like as an example, we might consider the life of the President of the United States, who certainly has incredible power and resources. In recent months, we've seen all too clearly that even he wasn't able to secure what he really needed, what he wanted, which was to perpetuate his own position of power. And even if we see an issue that needs to change to align things so they meet our demands, since everything is in flow and is constantly changing, when we change tack to put things right for us, other things also change, which can negate those actions. So what can we do? And what on earth has any of that got to do with metta? Well, the first thing is to relax and realize that we're not at the center of the universe. And if we can go even further and realize that the universe has no center, and is in some ways just a continuous flow. And I'd go further and say that to believe we can control anything outside of our own mind and responses to our experience is simply untrue. Simply put, nothing is under our control. And what I'm suggesting is that we look to bring a sense of metta, an open, expansive, loving kindness to everything that we encounter. Primarily because that sense of separation we feel, me and here, everything else out there, is in fact an illusion. And one of the places where this is so relevant is in respect to our relationship with nature. In Living with Awareness, Sangharakshita says that we need to bring a responsive awareness to what we perceive because we are active participants in consciousness, not merely receivers of messages from a fixed external universe. In our modern techno-scientific culture, we're able to do all kinds of things with and to the natural world, but as a result, we have lost our affinity with it. Alienated from nature, no longer experiencing it as a living presence, we sorely need to recapture the sense that to be human is to be part of nature. So that's a quote from Bhante. And that brings me to my final set of top tips. Thanks, Emma. So I want to return to my story of my car trundling down the road. Fortunately, the road I live on is more of an incline than a hill. And also because in my haste, I hadn't locked the car door, I was able to jump in and put the handbrake on. And it was then that I saw the true absurdity of my situation. The fact that I was trying to get the universe under my control was simply ridiculous. And I burst out laughing. And this is my first suggestion, that if possible, seeing the funny side to just how absurd we can be can actually be quite liberating. Picking up the important point made by Bhante in Living with Awareness, we really need to see the beauty in nature. For example, when I can't go swimming because the tide is out, instead of feeling conspired against, I can simply marvel in the teeming life on the mudflats, with birds and all manner of sea creatures living interconnectedly in the mud right below where I would normally be swimming. We need to become aware of our habitual ways of being that create a tightening and a separation, and reimagine the world as fluid, as deeply interconnected, and open ourselves to the mystery of this conditioned, alive flow of life. We need to reanimate the world and move away from an objective, self-referential perspective. And when we can do this, when we open our heart, we can truly perceive the beauty in our experience and begin to see life as an extraordinarily beautiful and complex tapestry. And we can edge towards this by starting to letting go of that utilitarian, reductive way of being. And that's not to say we can't still be productive. We can still engage in a lot of skillful action, but we can also just relax into the knowledge that our skillfulness leaves a thread within that tapestry of life. We can let go of taking ourselves so seriously, letting go of our central place in our experience, and open our hearts to others and to everything we experience. If we can engage that open heart with the world, engage with nature, we'll start to see the complexity in the interconnectedness and beauty of the universe. We could spend time on our me-centered agenda, unpicking threads and leaving holes in the tapestry, or we can just skillfully contribute our very own unique thread to the fabric of the universe. And we can do that with a sense of openness and with a sense of metta.